Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Keneal Gale. Prime Minister Andrew Holness brought the message of inclusive prosperity to the Joint Forum panel discussion at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in London today. The Prime Minister told the audience that one major issue standing in the way of Commonwealth countries achieving this is climate change. More in this report. Climate change is a major threat to economies across the region.
Last year in the Caribbean, we experienced 3 Category 5 hurricanes. Hurricanes which wiped out entire nations. Nations who are a part of our beloved Commonwealth.
He said dealing with the issue so far, for the most part, has been more talk than substance, leaving the Caribbean and Pacific states still vulnerable. He argued that funding for resilience and adaptation mitigation cannot be treated as aid.
It is imperative that the conversation around climate change and how it is to be financed be treated as an investment. That we make the investment in the resilience of these countries who are affected so that they can withstand, live through and recover quickly from these variable and extreme weather events.
However, the Prime Minister was quick to point out that this is not about handouts.
I don't want it to seem that small island states and developing countries are perpetually seeking aid and assistance. That's not the case. I believe that most developing countries have fully accepted that we must take responsibility for our own development and for our future. All we ask for is a fair environment, sustainable solutions that bring long-term security and in which we can all share prosperity.
Mr. Holness also called on Commonwealth countries to come together to champion a new system of classifying states so those most in need will be able to access funding.
Countries who are classified as middle-income countries can no longer get access to beneficial terms for development assistance. But overnight, their GDP could be wiped out. So I think a part of our conversation about fairness and sustainable solutions as a very powerful voice and a large part of the global population must be to push for a new system of classification.
Steer clear of protectionism. That's the word from the IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde. The IMF chief says she does not believe countries are doing all they can to facilitate collaborative dialogue, especially on issues of trade. She was speaking at the Managing Director's press conference at the IMF headquarters this morning. Angela Laidley was there.
Thanks, Keneal. Now, the spring meetings have been dominated by the looming threat of what many people are calling a trade war. Now, that was big on Madame Lagarde's agenda this morning as she cited some of the downside risks for low-income countries like Jamaica.
International cooperation, which has served us so well over generations, helping to reduce poverty and deliver more progress for more people than at any time in history. This international framework is now being questioned, especially with respect to trade.
Madame Lagarde says it's not just the USA and China. She's urging all countries not to adopt protectionist measures. She says it can be crippling for the world of trade.
Steer clear of all protectionism measures. In that respect, we believe that each country can do more, from looking at its own domestic policies to helping those affected by the dislocation from technological change and trade. So that relates to measures that need to be taken at home to improve compliance, but also to deal with those that are not benefiting from trade.
In the meantime, the IMF Managing Director has suggested that lower-income countries like Jamaica consider strengthening structural reforms as a buffer against protectionism.
Step up the structural reform. So once again, when the sun is shining, fix the roof, identify what is going to improve growth in the medium term and what could prevent a disappointing return to this mediocre that we had identified for advanced economies, and what will help low-income countries in particular catch up and better develop towards the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030.
Andrew Laidley reporting for BATV News from IMF headquarters, Washington, D.C.
President of the World Bank Group, Jim Young Kim, says the organization is currently exploring ways to use the tools of the rich to protect the poor. The World Bank president was responding to questions today from BATV's reporter Andrew Laidley during the bank's spring meetings now underway in Washington, D.C.
Now, World Bank President Jim Young Kim is urging Jamaica and other Caribbean islands to get insurance against any possible catastrophic risk. He says the World Bank is open to facilitating this kind of insurance for developing countries like Jamaica, since it's one of the ways to reduce any possible large economic fallout.
There are many different risks out there, and of course in Jamaica and the Caribbean, weather-related risks are particularly serious. And so one of the things that we've been focusing on is ensuring that developing countries can get access to tools, to financial tools that help them share their risk with the capital markets. And we've done that with the so-called catastrophic drawdown facilities, these instruments that will provide immediate cash to countries in the form of an insurance policy.
He says the model being used by the World Bank is predominantly exercised by rich people across the globe. But he notes that this time the model is being used to help poor and vulnerable countries.
So we're working right now on famine insurance, and it turns out that we probably can find a way to insure the poorest countries against famine. So at the World Bank Group, what we're trying to do is to be as innovative as we can and literally use the tools that the rich use to protect themselves and share their risk with capital markets on behalf of the poorest countries.
Meanwhile, the World Bank president is applauding the commitment from the government and the Jamaicans in enduring difficult austerity measures over the past few years, which he says was necessary.
Jamaica has gone through a very difficult but courageous reform process that's put your country on much more solid footing. And, frankly, 4 or 5 years ago, we were extremely worried about the Jamaican economy, and there's still many hurdles to get over. But the commitment of the government to reforms and the willingness of the Jamaican people to go through them has been really remarkable to watch.
I'm Andrew Laidley reporting for BATV News from World Bank headquarters, Washington, D.C.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Still to come, Jamaican Teas hits $1 billion milestone. This and more after the break. Welcome back. Jamaican Teas has surpassed the $1 billion mark in profit for 2017. The announcement was made at the company's annual general meeting yesterday. Jamila Maitland reports.
Jamaican Teas Limited, formerly Tetley Tea Company, is the largest producer of tea in the Caribbean with over 40 different varieties. The company recently added coffee to its portfolio. John Jackson, non-executive director at Jamaican Teas, says the company performed significantly well last year, with exports continuously growing over the past 4 years.
For this year, up to the end of March, export sales in Jamaican dollar terms were up 34%. Last year, for the fiscal year, it was up 26%. The year before, it was up 8%. The year before that, which was 2015, it was up 32%. The year before that, I think it declined moderately from a growth of 46% in 2013 and 29% in 2012. So That to me is a nice trajectory of growth and performance.
Meanwhile, Chief Executive Director John Mahfood says crime has made the local economy unfavorable for business. However, the company has seen rising profits outside of Jamaica since last year, a trend that is continuing in 2018.
The U.S. market did very, very well for us, and the Trinidad market did very well. And so far for 2018, we are seeing a continuation of that positive trend. We are now selling more on the export market than we are domestically. It is a good thing. It was always our objective to do so, but part of the reason we got there faster than we expected was the fact that the local economy is not delivering the type of growth that we wanted.
The closure of 2 of its Shoppers Delight supermarkets in 2016 cost the company $28 million. However, Mr. Jackson says the Kingston branch has shown potential to bring in some profits.
The supermarket, which we now have one, has been profitable and things are looking quite bright for it. We plan to do some capital expenditure for that supermarket that we believe will enhance the customer experience and provide for additional goods for display.
For BATV News, I'm Jamila Maitland.
Cane farmers at the Freedom Jones estate in St. Thomas are crying foul. They say a faulty scale at the estate has resulted in them being paid less for products reaped. Here's Ocean Morgan.
Disgruntled cane farmers of the Fred M. Jones estate took industrial action on Wednesday. They say faulty measuring scales have consistently understated the weight of cane reaped.
Every time we cut over the past 4 years, we have cut cane. And we cut up a line of cane, but we take at least 2 days to cut. And that cane normally weigh out 13 ton or 14 ton. All of a sudden, it starts to reach, cut down to 5 ton, 4 ton. I cut cane, I judge pan cane. If I cut cane and I take up every cane in my hand, I must can judge cane. Every time I cut a pile of cane and I say, this cane I judge it for 9 ton. When I look at 4 ton, 3 ton, something is wrong. Something is wrong with the scale.
The farmers say they are not satisfied with their employers' attempts to rectify the situation by personally checking the functionality of the scales. The workers instead are calling on the Bureau of Standards to check the scales and ensure that they are properly calibrated.
We call the boss and we are discussing to the boss. Them go over there and check the scale, him claim say much can't check the scale. Me don't know him as a man who can verify the check scale, but he saying check scale. I don't believe in that checking. Me would have liked somebody from the Bureau of Standards to check the scale. Verify to me.
They're also demanding reconciliation for monies lost from previous inaccurate sugarcane weighings.
Means to me I lose money from crop start and from the other crop before. This is no give and take, you know. I have $454 for cane, $57 a ton for cane. Me can't give and take with no money, you know. Me have pitney and grand pitney to take care of, you know. Me have a life.
Meanwhile, they're also making claims that they've been left out of potential benefits from grants made available through the European Union.
We got caught because the same thing. We in a war with the headman because the same thing.
For BATV News, I'm Ocean Morgan.
Crime, corruption, and bureaucracy are 3 thorny issues when it comes to doing business in Jamaica. That is why Executive Director of the National Integrity Action, NIA, Professor Trevor Monroe, wants more to be done to fix these problems. The NIA head was speaking at the Sam Sharp Teachers College's annual research day on Tuesday. The event was held under the theme Crime and Violence, Educate to Eradicate. Javon Keys has more.
Jamaica is not unique, we're not peculiar. The entire world is challenged by corruption.
He also noted that corruption is a major part of crime and violence, which he claims leads back to an abuse of power.
That's, broadly speaking, what corruption is, the abuse of position. And the position usually carries some power, it usually carries some authority, and when that is abused for illicit advantage, whether personal advantage or the advantage of your family, the advantage of your political party, the advantage of your clan, as the case may be, that is what we mean by corruption.
Each year, there are different global rankings and studies done to measure the progress of countries with regards to certain indicators. Those studies have consistently pointed to a few issues when it comes to doing business in Jamaica.
In Jamaica, the top 3 problems for doing business here, whether foreign business or local business, whether foreign investor or local investor, are 3. Crime, which we would obviously be aware of. Jamaica usually ranks in the top 3 in the world in terms of the number of murders committed, percentage-wise. Secondly, corruption. And thirdly, red tape or bureaucracy. The length of time and the number of hurdles you have to cross to get anything done, those are the 3 most problematic factors.
The NIA Executive Director went on to say that in order for Jamaica to meet the Sustainable Development Goals SDGs set for 2030, corruption and bribery must be reduced significantly.
It's a global problem. The United Nations in 2015, all the countries of the world met together to identify what is required for sustainable development. Not just development, but development that can be sustained. And goal number 16 of the number of goals set in order for there to be sustainable development says that, quotes, to substantially reduce corruption in all its forms. Corruption and bribery in all its forms. Without that substantial reduction of corruption and bribery in all its forms, there is no sustainable development.
For BATV News, I'm Javon Keys.
And stay with us. Regional and international news are up next. Welcome back. Time now for regional and international news. The blame game for the Windrush saga is continuing in the British Parliament. Prime Minister Theresa May has claimed that the Labour Party ordered the destruction of thousands of Windrush Generations landing cards in 2009. More in this report.
How culpable is Theresa May over the plight of the children who emigrated legally from British colonies in the Caribbean and made their home in the UK as part of the Windrush generation?
Questions to the Prime Minister.
Home Secretary when the immigration rules hardened in 2014 and now presiding over the fallout. She came to the Commons to apologise yet again.
For those who have mistakenly received letters challenging them, I want to say apologise to them, and I want to say sorry to anyone who has been caused has confusion or anxiety felt as a result of this.
Jeremy Corbyn tried to lay the blame squarely at her door.
Yesterday we learnt that in 2010 the Home Office destroyed landing cards for a generation of Commonwealth citizens, and so have told people we can't find you in our system. Did the Prime Minister, the then Home Secretary, sign off that decision?
Prime Minister.
No, the decision to destroy the landing cards was taken in 2009 under a Labour government.
Pulling that rabbit out of a hat delighted Tory backbenchers, but it backfired minutes later when her spokesperson admitted it was officials at the border agency, not Labour ministers, who'd made the decision.
Many of those coming ashore were wives and children of men already working here.
The destruction of the landing cards is important because many of the Windrush children arrived on their parents' passports. The landing slips key documentary proof of their provenance.
Often it's the only record those people have. The landing card is essentially a form of identity for them in terms of who they are and when they arrived, and it's highly regrettable that they were destroyed.
This afternoon, the Prime Minister was giving a warm welcome to the Canadian President. The question of why the welcome the Windrush citizens should have enjoyed was so cruelly withdrawn is one that's causing the Prime Minister huge damage. Romilly Weeks, ITV News.
The way is now clear for some Commonwealth citizens to vote in the next general election in Barbados. Here's more.
Commonwealth citizens who have been living in Barbados for at least 3 years can now vote in the next general election once they qualify under the Representation of the People Act. This as the Crown reversed the Electoral and Boundaries Commission's position on their eligibility. The update came on Tuesday from attorney Wilfred Abrams. He was on a team of lawyers representing Commonwealth citizens who brought a class action suit challenging the EBC's stance of not allowing them to join the voters list.
They had stated that it was their long-held policy and they were not authorized to register anyone as an elector in Barbados unless that person was a citizen, a resident, or an immigrant possessing the status of resident, immigration status of resident or immigrant in Barbados. We contended from the outset that was wrong. The Electoral and Boundaries had strenuously defended that position up to yesterday. So that was their position throughout the whole of the initial hearing at the lower court. And that was their position in all of the submissions and pleadings and everything leading up to the appeal until yesterday morning. So with them officially withdrawing from that position, the way is now open to all persons who are qualified under the Act, all of the Commonwealth citizens who have been residing in Barbados for a period of 3 years or more, who are not disqualified under the Act. They can now apply and have their applications processed. So they're effectively now in the same position as any Barbadian registering to vote in the upcoming election. We just want to make that very clear.
Mr. Abrams said the EBC had admitted it was wrong.
What is worthy of note, this position was not an order of the court as of yet. This was not a position arrived at by the court. This was the Electoral and Boundaries Commission through their attorneys coming out and saying our policy was wrong. We acknowledge that now, and we wish to state for the record that our policy was wrong and unlawful.
Customs and excise officers in Trinidad and Tobago are now better equipped to verify contents in containers on the port at Point Lisas. More from C News' Ian Wason.
The 4 new scanners were donations from the U.S. government.
Our commitment to this country is ongoing, is outstanding. We want to be your partner. That has not changed.
The scanners will help in border protection and revenue collection, as they would allow port officials to see what are in the containers. That way they will know if the invoice or bill matches the contents in the container. But before the containers can be used, necessary steps were needed to be taken.
First, we had to get customs to agree to use them. Then we had to arrange for their refurbishment. Then we had to arrange for their maintenance. Then we had to deal with the possibility that radiation from the scanners might affect the human beings that operate them.
While PIPDECO got the Point Lisas port ready, the Port Authority is still yet to get the Port of Spain port ready to use the scanners.
You need a paved area. You need a booth for people who are not involved in the exercise itself. You need a fence. There are small, minor infrastructure matters have to be dealt with. Prior to that, we had to deal with things like radiation and so on. That has been resolved.
But when will Port of Spain be ready to use the scanners so it can benefit from a smooth process?
The end of June.
2 scanners each are in Point Lisas and the Port of Spain. They will be used at both enter and exit points of the ports. Ian Rayson, C News.
Stay with us. Talking Stocks comes up next. Welcome back. Time now for Talking Stocks. 45 stocks traded today, of which 19 advanced, 18 declined, and 8 traded firm. The main JSE index advanced by 1,855 points to close at over 296,000 points. The junior index declined by 15 points to close at 2,901. Over 103 million units traded today, valued at over $243 million on the Jamaican dollar market. And on the US dollar market, over 19,000 units traded, amounting to $11,700 US. JMMB preference shares with 100 million units changing hands accounted for 96% of market volume. Supreme Ventures Limited was second with 532,000 units trading, and Wesinco Group with 478,000 units trading accounted for less than 1% of market volume crossing the floor. Proven Investments was the top advancer, up 2 cents to close at 23 cents, followed by Sagicor X Fund up 50 cents to close at $15, and Kingston Wharves up $1.24 to close at $45. The main decliners were Knutsford Express losing 53 cents to close at $13.47, followed by Radio Jamaica losing 4 cents to close at $1.06, and Separate Group down 96 cents to close at $34. And that's the news for this evening, but before we go, a recap of our top story. Prime Minister Andrew Holness told the Commonwealth Heads of Government Forum today that funding given to member states to mitigate the effects of climate change should not be classified as aid, but instead as an investment. Thanks for watching. For more content, visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Kenil Gale. Pleasant viewing.